Okay, welcome back. Anne, how are you? It's another installment of Ask Eddie and Anne.
Yeah, I'm doing well. Very excited. The night we're recording this is the opening of San Francisco Silent Film Festival. So I'm very excited. And a very old friend of mine from my Scarecrow video days, Sean Axemaker, is staying with me. So it's going to be really fun.
Excellent. Sean, a valued contributor to the NOIR City magazine. And it's, I will be going, we both will be going to the Silent Film Festival. We're just not going tonight because we had to do this. We had to record this because, there are a lot of people who expect it now. And
Yeah.
it's good. It's funny. I was in Bologna recently, and there were people there who said, "Hey, we watch the Ask Eddie and Ann thing all the time."
Oh,
So it reaches around the world.
that's so exciting.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. So yes, all kinds of stuff has been going on. I know people have lots of questions that I have no answers for.
You'll just have to
and
guess.
but we'll just answer the questions that we have right in front of our face.
Okay,
Those things I have answers for.
and we should probably mention that North City, Philadelphia is coming up
Yes. When will this installment be airing or broadcast or whatever we say?
a week
Posted.
tomorrow from when we're recording it. So today's the
Okay.
12th, so it'll go up on the 19th, or sorry, the 20th.
On the 20th, which is just before NOIR City, Philadelphia. So if you're in the Philadelphia area or anywhere nearby, come on down and see me. And more importantly, see the films. It's a pretty good lineup. I'm happy to be doing it at this venue. The people have been great and very, very cooperative, and there's a lot of enthusiasm. So I'm eager to be there next weekend.
And I also want to let people know that if you're interested in going to North City Hollywood, tickets are on sale now.
They are. We're getting very excited about that program as well, which is the 4th to the 13th of August. This year, we're usually at the Egyptian Theater in Hollywood. This year, we will be at the Aero Theater in Santa Monica because they are still refurbishing and remodeling the Egyptian. And we'll see. I mean, the plan is that we'll go back there whenever it is available.
Yes.
So that's the scoop. So, anything else newsworthy to report before we dive into these questions?
Nope, that's it. That's all I've got.
Okay. But we'll probably be doing another one of these before. Well, if not, the 8th of August, I'm just going to give a plug right now. On, and I don't believe this is posted yet or that tickets are available or anything. But on August 8th in San Francisco, I will be doing an event at the Vogue Theater, which is just a conversational event with this woman, Christine Madrid French, who's written a wonderful book on called The Architecture of Suspense about architecture in the films of Alfred Hitchcock. And she's also part of the SF Heritage, which is a preservation group. And we obviously recently met and joined forces, shall we say, in our campaign to save the seats at the Castro Theater, which apparently is not going to work. But hey, one of the bonuses of that is that I met Christine, and we're going to have a very lively discussion about cultural preservation and film and all kinds of stuff. But she's delightful and very, very smart, and I'm looking forward to doing that. So that's at the Vogue Theater on August 8th. That's going to be happening. Just check social media. There'll be more information about it coming up soon.
And we'll put something on our news page. So if you go to filmnoirfoundation.org, there is a news page and we put up events there.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, let's dive in. Are you going to start us off here, Ann?
I'll start us off. Was the Stanford Theater ever considered to host a North City Film Festival? And what film ranks in your mind as the most important yet to be restored?
Okay, I'll answer the second one first. which is no answer. Because it's sort of my thing to not talk about the films. On the one hand, talking about them could dislodge something somewhere. But whoops, I'm knocking my light around. But the odds of that are few and far between, because I know most of the people now in archives around the world. So if I'm after something, I know where to go to kind of try to get it. And anyway, and I don't like to talk about films that we're trying to restore, because for various reasons. Either if it doesn't work out, then it's everybody considers it a loss, where if they never knew we were looking for it in the first place, it's not a bad thing. And also, it's just tricky. If I mention something, then people put up inferior versions of it on YouTube and just try to piggyback on that interest that is now generated in that title, and people watch it in an inferior version before we can restore it and put it out in a good version, because that's often the case. I mean, sometimes it's funny that we'll say we're restoring this film that's a lost film, and people say, no, it's not, I saw it on YouTube. And it's like, well, yeah, you saw a bad VHS recording digitized from a television broadcast 30 years ago. I mean, yeah, if you're an absolute completist and you want to see that film for some reason, that's terrific. But if you want to see the film as it was originally made, you kind of have to find these things and restore them. So I tend to not discuss the works in progress. No, we never considered a Noir City event at the Stanford Theater in Palo Alto, which is David Packard's theater down there. And David Packard, as I'm sure a lot of people know, is probably now the preeminent film preservationist, perhaps in the world, because he is the biggest source of funding and support for the UCLA Film and Television Archive. And the Stanford Theater is his little crown jewel down in Palo Alto, California. And it's his thing. He's not too welcoming to other people who come in and want to do stuff. I mean, he has his programs that he likes to show. And I remember once upon a time I said, would you be interested in doing a show there? And I wanted to have Ann Savage, and we'd show Detour and all this stuff. And there was just absolutely no interest, because all the programming comes from within the Stanford Theater. They don't really work with people outside, and the programming is very much reflective of David's tastes and what he wants to present. So it's a fine venue, and I'm certainly glad it exists, but it's not all that welcoming to collaborations.
Yeah, and I just would say to people in the area, if you haven't been to Stanford Theater, it's a real treat. Yeah. And also, his concessions are just like so reasonably priced. I was shocked. I was like, this is great.
Well, and I'm not saying this in any way to be slighting David, because he is the single most important figure in film preservation right now in terms of the funding of film preservation. But it is one of those things where it's wonderful that theater is there, but he's super rich.
Yeah.
I mean, David is one of the richest guys in America, and he can operate that theater at a loss.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, it's just a vanity project for him, and that's wonderful. But is it a model for how movie theaters can actually succeed? I don't know, because he's one of the few people that can show Top Hat 10 times a year in that theater, and it doesn't matter if there are 8 people or 800 people. I don't even think it seats 800 people. It just doesn't matter, because he wants to do it, and he's going to do it, and that's it. So as you say, it's a wonderful venue. It is not a model for how a movie theater, a rep cinema, can be effectively run, because it does not make money,
Yeah.
but it doesn't need to. Okay. Now here's well, I can see already. This is our pal Michael in Post Falls, Idaho, weighing in early in this week's installment. And I want to thank Michael. He sent me a book that I have over here that's very interesting about junior college basketball championships.
That's very specific.
That is a very, very specific thing, but it's really cool. I enjoyed looking through that, and I will return to it. So I thank Michael for sending that to me. Now he says, though not as devoted as I am, my wife Linda enjoys watching film noir. Well, that's good, because that's going to keep the marriage together. She gets a kick out of the sap who makes poor judgments after succumbing to the charms of a femme fatale. She calls such a dope an homme stupide. It seems appropriate for Steve in Crisscross, which we watched again last night. Even after Anna delivers her femme fatale manifesto speech near the end, Steve continues in his homme stupide mode. Yes. So Michael wants to know if either of us have ever heard this term used before. And Linda was wondering if I've encountered it anywhere else, or if she coined a new noir phrase. After all, you can't really have a femme fatale without at least one homme stupide. Okay. No, I have not heard the term before.
I have not either.
I guess Linda has coined a phrase, although in some case, I don't think, I would caution care in how the term is applied, because there are stupid guys, and then there are guys who are doing exactly what they want.
Yeah.
Even though it's leading to their destruction. I mean, those are very interesting characters. I don't think you can, is Walter Neff in Double Indemnity a homme stupide? I don't think so. I think he knows exactly what he's doing at all times. He's not, in some cases, these people have a death wish. It's not like they're just being stupid. They're fulfilling their destinies.
Well, I think, Neff is a guy who thinks he's the smartest guy in the room, and like, he works for Keys. He should know better.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. So that's a good one, the homme stupide.
I like it.
Okay.
Hey. This is another one from Michael.
Michael's kind of taken over the show here. He has so many questions.
I mean, I hope it's Michael's and not someone else's, and I put this name
okay.
twice, but
okay.
I think it's for Michael. I didn't notice. I recently watched I know I put this in. I recently watched a 58-minute B-Noir programmer titled Pier 23, featuring Hugh Beaumont as Dennis O'Brien, a San Francisco detective who rents boats when he's not being knocked out and accused of murder while working 2 cases in the film. I also saw Roaring City, another under an hour picture with Beaumont, who again endures the same predicament in 2 more cases. Spartan Productions also released a 3rd Beaumont O'Brien flick, Danger Zone, with the same format, all 3 based on stories from the writing team of Herb Margolis and Lou Moraheim, and were apparently recycled from the old scripts of the radio program PAT NOVACK for Hire. Spartan packaged the films in the 2-case format with the intention of eventually breaking them up for television. Have either of you seen any of the films or listened to the old PAT NOVACK program? Any background on 2 writers? Did the stories get sold to TV?
Okay, well, I'm going to leave the PAT NOVACK radio shows to you, because that's your specialty.
Yeah.
I have seen Pier 23. I have not seen Roaring City or Danger Zone. I'm sure my old pal Art Lyons wrote about those in his book Death on the Cheap, which is specifically about all those super low budget B movies. I know Hugh O'Brien was in a lot of them, Money Madness, and of course Railroaded, which is the great Anthony Mann B noir. Pier 23 is also a real restaurant in San Francisco. I happen to know the owner of that restaurant. It's a good place. So if you're ever in San Francisco and looking for a place to eat down on the Embarcadero, I would say go to Pier 23. That's a good spot. So I don't really know that much about Herb Margolis or Lou Morheim. So what's the take on Pat Novak for Hire? What can you tell us about that, Anne?
It's hilarious. I recommend it so highly, because it's almost as I mean, he has cases, but it's a very satirical look at that genre of fiction. So they're really, really funny. And some of the dialogue's really ridiculous, and it's being delivered, in Jack Webb's voice, which makes it even funnier. And there's also Jeff Regan. So it's Pat Novak for Hire and Jeff Regan Investigator, and they're basically pretty much the same stories. He just went. One was originally done in San Francisco, and then the second series I think got picked up for LA, and so they just changed the name of the character, but it's basically they're pretty much the same. But yeah, you can find them really easily if people just Google old time radio and the name of the series. And I wrote an article on those two in Dragnet for NOIR City quite some time ago. It was before we started doing the annuals. And actually, it was really incredible because when I met Leonard Maltin, I had him sign his book on radio, and he was at one of our festivals. He was like, sign it for me. And I said, yeah, I really loved your book on radio, and I'm writing this series of radio noir articles for NOIR City. And he said, yeah, I've been reading them. I'm really looking forward to the next one. And
Awesome.
that was the best compliment I've ever gotten. Well, at the time my dad said I looked like Rita Hayworth. So it's the second greatest compliment I had, the way I'd done my hair. But yeah, I highly recommend those. They're really fun. They're very different from Dragnet. I think people will be surprised because Jack Webb has a really great sense of humor. And I guess people who watch the Dragnet series probably knows that from his interactions sometimes with Henry Morgan. Obviously, it comes across, but these are pure fun. They're not serious at all, and I highly recommend them.
Great. That's cool. We should bring back that story since your piece on Radio Noir sort of predated, as you said, the new format of the magazine and the annuals. Maybe we should do a revised version of that, slightly revised,
Yeah.
and do it again. That would be great.
Yeah, I'd love to do that because I'd love, because I've mentioned them before and people have asked me where they can read them, so it would be nice to do them again.
Okay, we'll put that in the hopper. One of the great things in my trip to Bologna was I got to spend some time with Imogen Sarah Smith, who is now the editor in chief of the Noir City magazine. And Imogen is just the greatest. I think she's the best writer on film working today. And so the fact that she's now the editor of our magazine is a huge bonus. And we'll just put that on the list of features to come.
Right.
We'll get a radio noir redux from you,
Cool.
Anne. That would be great.
That'd be fantastic. I'd love it.
Okay. Okay, so Liz asks if we have any comments or opinions on Quiet Please Murder. She calls it a very unique B noir. I agree, Liz.
I agree.
Quiet Please Murder is fantastic. I believe it's from 1942. It's a Fox film starring George Sanders, and Gail Patrick is in it. Do you want to give a little thumbnail of what this of what the movie is kind of about, and then we'll discuss what makes it, in my mind, particularly interesting.
Yeah, well, it is about so I guess, yeah, it's about basically a murderer in a library who's like hiding out in the library. It's kind of hard to explain. Maybe you can do a better job.
Well, that most of the movie is that what you just described. But George Sanders plays an art forger, and he works with this whole ring of people who create forgeries and sell them to unsuspecting people. But then in the end, he has to go into the library because I honestly can't remember how it worked in the plot, but he has to get into the library and steal this piece, this rare piece. There was some kind of mix up or something. But what makes it so fascinating is that it's set in 1942 in Los Angeles, and there is a blackout because of the war. And so the library goes completely dark with all these people in it who are trapped in the library because there's a murder, and the murderer is still loose in the library. And yes, it is so incredibly fun. And it's just goofy. But there's also a really weird undercurrent of sexual perversion in this film that George Sanders plays so easily
Yeah.
on screen. Gail Patrick is kind of the surprise as his foil.
Yeah.
And it's clear that they're into some really weird, kinky stuff. And I seem to recall particularly a scene where, well, I shouldn't spoil it. Maybe I shouldn't spoil it, but they just find some really clever ways to get stuff past the production code that are so subtle that a modern audience just cracks up laughing like, oh my God, I can't believe they're going there. But I think in 1942, not many people, none of that stuff registered on an audience in 1942. So I don't think people were talking about the movie the same way back then that they talk about it now. That
Yeah.
I have to say that Quiet Please Murder was one of those films that I booked for Noir City without having seen it.
Oh.
I just knew that I wanted to show it came about because I was doing a festival of A and B movies chronologically in order from like the beginning of the noir era through the end of the 40s. So it was an A picture and a B picture. And so when we got I obviously I showed this on a double bill with This Gun for Hire. They were both 1942 movies, This Gun for Hire being the A picture and Quiet Please Murder being the B picture. And the B picture won the evening because the audience just went nuts for this film. So I have real hopes that I can somehow pull this out of the vault at 20th Century Fox. When I showed that the first time, Disney had not yet taken possession of the 20th Century Fox library, and it was much, much easier to get films out of them. My old pal Sean Belston was still doing all that work, but now it's difficult, and I think it'll be especially difficult to try and get that on TCM. But we'll see. I never give up.
Yeah, and I was there when we screened it, and that was really fun because one, the film was just fun too, but that was a great movie to see with the crowd.
Absolutely, and good because it's so unknown that the print was excellent.
Yeah,
the print was in great shape. That's what we love is when you find those movies that are so rare that the prints are still pristine, so that the film doesn't have to be restored.
Yeah,
it's never been shown really. That's pretty great.
Okay, and this is Dennis from Champlain, New York. Any thoughts on Desire Me? I love Mitch's assessment of the film in an interview with Robert Osborne when he said nobody desired anybody. I'm fascinated by that brief period where Mitchum was on loan to MGM and did this alongside Undercurrent. I think he did The Locket during this time as well.
I have not seen the movie, so unfortunately I can't really comment on Desire Me. Have you seen it?
Nope.
Okay, so sorry, Dennis, but that's a strikeout on that one. I have seen Undercurrent, and all I can say about that is it should be noticeable that I have never programmed it in the 24 years that I have been doing Noir City festivals.
Which one's Undercurrent?
I have never. It's Katharine Hepburn's
lone.
It's terrible.
Terrible.
It's a terrible movie. Yeah, directed by Vincent Minnelli, and Robert Taylor's in it with Katharine Hepburn and Robert Mitchum, and it's just a bad film. I would put it on the short list of unwatchable noir films.
Yeah.
And I don't say that about too many movies, but that just doesn't work. It's
Yeah.
just it's a total misfire. Unlike The Locket, which I could watch 100 times, and the Locket, of course, was not a MGM film. That's a RKO movie, but um, terrific film. Everything that's great about The Locket is like totally what's lacking in Undercurrent. I also don't think that Hepburn enjoyed making the film, and it's kind of obvious
Yeah,
that
she
she,
actually spit on Robert Mitchum at one point.
yeah,
Yeah.
she didn't like him at all and thought he was a terrible actor.
Yeah.
And you know, that's it. Boy, I just unloaded on a noir film. That's kind of a first for our shows. You know, I don't usually just flat out trash a movie, but I'm trashing Undercurrent. I don't like that at all.
Yeah, it's not
So
worth
now I know
watching.
I'll hear. We're going to hear from all the people that's their favorite noir film, and now,
I don't think we have to worry about that, Eddie, but we'll see.
yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Okay. Um, Joe from Suffolk County says he's heard us both speak frequently about Vertigo, and rightfully so. It's hard to talk about movies and not talk about Vertigo.
Yeah, it comes up.
Uh, to me, Scotty being a jerk is the whole point. However, I don't remember either of you mentioning Stolen Face, which I think of as a precursor to Vertigo. And then he describes the plot, which, well, okay, I will repeat this because he is not really spoiling anything. A surgeon operates on a female convict. That's Paul Henreid operates on his female convict to make her look exactly like his lost love, which happens to look a lot like Elizabeth Scott. Um, yeah, it makes crack. No misplaced scar, those, but things still go about as you would expect. He's just curious if we have any thoughts on this movie. Have you seen this movie, Stolen Face?
No, but when you read that question, it reminded me, uh, like when I was young, I must have been in junior high, but there used to be like these really weird late shows where I lived, and they were always sort of macabre, not really horror. But one of them was this film called Scalpel, and in it, this guy is kind of a similar thing, except this girl has an accident. This guy just happens to be a plastic surgeon in his own state. And what's weird is that he gives her his dead daughter's face, and then he pursues like a sexual relationship with her. It's really creepy, and it was so
Okay,
funny.
okay? That movie was not made in 1950.
No, it was like made like probably like late 70s, early, yeah, it must
Okay,
have been late 70s. And it was so weird because it always stuck with me. And I never heard of it again. And then I was on loan to a video store from another one, and it was there. I was so shocked because I just would have thought that thing had completely disappeared. It was like, okay, so that did exist. That wasn't like me falling asleep in
and
front of the
this was
TV.
an American film.
It was an American film. Yeah, it was
It
really.
sounds like an Italian. Sounds like a giallo. You
It
know.
does, yeah. I mean, that's what
Yeah.
I would have thought it was. But as far as I know, like it was an American film. Yeah, it was weird though to see that. And the
Um,
woman in it was like somebody like Jennifer O'Neill or something like that. I'm not saying it was Jennifer O'Neill, but a similar type.
it's funny. Stolen Face. I have seen, and I again, it's not as bad as Undercurrent, but it's not. I didn't like it, and it was disappointing because years and years ago, before I even had written Dark City, the first time, I was collecting noir photographs, and I found, because I knew I was going to do this book project, and I was looking around for cool photos and things, and I just wanted good pictures. I didn't At this point it didn't really matter what the films were. And I came across these photos from Stolen Face that were really great. Like they were great still photos from the movie, some great shots of Liz Scott. And one of which ended up in Dark City, even though I barely mentioned the film. And so when I finally did see the movie, and not a very good version, mind you. I'm just like what I was saying about why I don't like to talk about these films, because I don't like people going and seeing inferior copies on YouTube. That's sort of how I ended up seeing Stolen Face, was on a really, really bad copy. So it had an impact on my assessment of the film, but I didn't love the film. I thought it was I thought Paul Heinried was in that phase of his career where he was more interested in being a director than in being an actor, and I think he was just collecting a paycheck for that one. It's not a particularly good performance, I don't think. Um, and the premise was also kind of creepy because, I mean, just it's just creepy all the way around. You know, uh, this is a very well used plot for movies, right? Whether it's whatever. I mean, it kind of reminds me of, may he rest in peace, Julian Sands, who did that movie with Jennifer Lynch, Boxing Helena,
Mm-hmm.
where he, and it's like The Collector and
Yeah.
all this stuff. But the altering the woman to make her, his fantasy prize is a. There was also a movie. Did you ever see this movie with Bruce Dern called Tattoo?
Yeah, that was
With
so
with
freaky.
Yeah, with Maud Adams, where he kidnaps her and he wants to tattoo her. And I mean, these films aren't going to get made again, because
That's fine.
they're so incredibly incorrect, especially Tattoo, because at the end, when she finally relents and agrees to let him tattoo her,
Yeah.
it like it ends up being like this passionate thing where she succumbs to the guy in the end and all that. It's like, holy cow. They're not remaking that movie anytime soon. Okay, well,
Okay.
so that's two: Desire Me and Stolen Face. People are digging deep to try to stump us now, Anne.
I know it's
We
been
we're gonna have to catch up here.
okay. So let's see. This one is from Arlene. Don't you think the kitten in this Gun for Hire is the cutest cat in film noir? It's very adorable, but I have affection for the black cat in The Third Man because my dad loved that so much and loved that cat so much. So I think that's the cutest cat. But I'm sentimental about my pops.
Okay, I don't know that I have a particular favorite. It's funny being a cat guy. I should have a favorite, but I like the dogs. I like dogs in movies. Kind of, they seem to be able to function more in a plot. Cats are just kind of they're used to reveal the sensitive nature of the character, whereas dogs actually can be their own characters and are essential to the plot, right?
Yeah. Oh, and we should mention in the movie Obsession, the English film, with the world's that's probably the best
That's
dog
probably the
ever.
best dog in a film noir.
But
I
that's up on
mean,
the Criterion channel right now.
oh yeah, they have that Brit Noir series that Imogen has a great video essay to start that. It's funny. There was a film on there that I had not seen before called The Small Black Room that I watched. It's a Powell and Pressburger film, and I couldn't figure out why. For once, it was like I was the guy saying, "Why is this noir?" Really, it didn't feel like a film noir to me at all. So I was wondering why it was in that section. It was a weird movie. I didn't really enjoy it that much, but I like. There's another Brit film called Cloudburst that I prefer. That's kind of about the same thing. It's about you know the war effort in England, and they Cloudburst gets a crime story out of it and turns it into a real noir, whereas The Small Black Room stays kind of a domestic drama kind of thing. And anyway, sorry, that was totally off the track. But
And
we're still talking about cats in film noir.
and Arlene just kind of threw that in.
Okay,
Here's the
because that's not even her real question.
That's not a real question.
Okay.
And I thought I read something awful once about Veronica Lake and two other beautiful Hollywood starlets, and happily can find no record of it. So I thought I read that Hitler invited them to visit his castle in the 1930s before America was involved in the war, and that they went. Cannot remember who the other two were. Where I read it, nothing more than what I've written here. I hate the story. Feel awful for her. She was sick, lost her baby, all kind of problems. Still, have you ever heard of anything like this?
No. Vaguely this rings a bell about actresses who accepted invitations from Hitler, prior to full-on war erupting. Veronica Lake was not one of them,
No,
because
I just
she wasn't even a thing in the late 30s. I mean, Veronica Lake wasn't a thing until like 42. So I don't think there might be a mix up with another actress, but I don't think that actually happened. This is going
uh
to be like that. That's like the modern equivalent of that is, I don't know if you ever seen those videotapes of that when Putin invited all those celebrities to come to Moscow, and he put on the big show and he actually sang, and you see all these people that you otherwise have respect for who accepted this invitation, and they're like watching this bizarre performance. I think Putin sang um, Blueberry Hill, Fats Domino's Blueberry Hill, and they're just sitting there like, this is good, and it's horrifying to witness.
that story rings a bell, and think that I mean I've seen a fictionalized version, and I think it was in the Winds of War, if I'm recalling correctly. And by the way, if people have not seen the miniseries The Winds of War, you should see that. It's an incredible. It's based on the book by
Yeah.
Herman Wouk, and it's just this incredible um, look at the events leading up to America's entry into World War II. And you just and they take it all these because it centers around a naval family, but you see it from all these different points of view, and it's really incredible. And I was reading a book about Dan Curtis, who produced that, and there's a terrible scene in it. I mean, it's a good scene, but it's terrible to watch. With Jews being led into the shower, and the cyanide gas coming down. And so he got, they hadn't aired it yet. And he got pulled into the brass's office, and they're like, there's nudity in it. And he was basically, if that's the only goddamn thing you're seeing right now, there's something
Yeah.
wrong with you. The obscenity is what happened, not the nudity. But anyway, I really recommend that series. It's just incredible. And when I worked at a video store, like I had someone come in and he says, I'm teaching World War II. I want to show them something. And so I don't know how much time you have, but I really recommend the Winds of War, because like I said, it's just from all these different perspectives. And
Yeah.
there's stuff I learned about that we'll put in there that people weren't really talking about, like the New York Times killing stories about the Jews being rounded up and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Well, I remember when it came out, originally on television,
Mm-hmm.
and I watched it then, but I have not revisited it in all those years because, wow, that came out a long time ago, right?
Yeah.
That was in the 70s. Was that the
80s. I was living
70s
in
or
London.
80s? Okay, in 80s.
80s.
Uh, so thanks for that. I'll revisit. Um, okay. Rob in Woodland, California says German Expressionism. Here's our German Expressionism question for the week. Is known for its strange effects, mist, shadows, sharp angles, etc. In my opinion, these things invite us to view reality from a different perspective. Watching the discussion of the three versions of M on the El Vampiro Negro DVD, it was interesting to see that in the original M, Fritz Lang has a low angle shot of a multi story stairway. This is the shot we see in Hitchcock and frequently in noir. I think the shot invites us to have a different perspective. Yes. A mundane set of stairs becomes intriguing. Is it accurate to claim that the multi story staircase shot we see so often in noir is an example of German Expressionism? I would not. I would not necessarily say so. I think that Expressionism is more a sense of when what you're actually seeing in front of the camera has been arranged in such a way as that it is not real. It is not a depiction of reality. It is a depiction of the internal state of the characters. So, in Expressionism, and this, as you said at the top, and this at the Silent Film Festival coming up this week, I'll be presenting this film called The Organist of St. Vitus Cathedral, which is in Prague. And it's a Czechoslovakian film from 1929 that is a very good example of expressionistic filmmaking, where the sets are clearly constructed and they're not real. They're more indicative of the states of mind of the characters than they are of reality. So, for example, in M, that staircase is a real staircase. The way it's shot may be from a low angle or something that's a very dynamic visual. I don't think it's necessarily expressionism per se. But I get what Bob is saying, that you're going to see it from an unusual perspective that alters the way you normally perceive reality. That I buy. Correct. But whether that means it's an example of expressionism or not, I wouldn't be so quick to assume that. But boy, Bob, when you get into stairways in noir, there are a lot of them. I mean, stairways are featured prominently because they're so visually dynamic.
Yeah. No,
Great way to make an entrance, great way to die falling down the stairs. There's I think like the staircase and Strange Love of Martha Ivers is really fantastic. And
well, and I always think of Psycho. I mean, that murder on the staircase is
the overhead shot on the
overhead
staircase
shot. Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And it's really funny. Oh God, I'm blanking on the name. But when Richard Widmark like shoves the old
Mildred Dunnick, when he throws her down the stairs in a wheelchair.
It's really funny because in the second Friday the 13th movie, there's a scene when a guy in a wheelchair actually gets murdered and he goes backwards down the staircase. And it's so funny because people always talk about that scene. All these like horror reviewers always talk about it. They watch on YouTube, and I'm always like, you guys, that's from a film noir.
It's just
like, such a great shot. And it's like I'm pretty sure that the writer of the film had seen that.
Yeah,
that's why that shot's in there.
That's one of the great reverse angle shots in noir, where you see him pushing her towards the camera, and then it cuts to the other angle, and you see her pitching over. That's apparently that's Rodney Amato, is the guy in the wheelchair taking the fall for Mildred Dunnick. He was actually a dialogue coach and would become a screenwriter. And at that time, he was married to Colleen Gray. That's how I know this story, because Colleen said that he came home and said, "Wow, I did a stunt today in this." This is the old days in Hollywood when a writer could say, "I'll do that. I'll get in the wheelchair and go down the stairs." And there was, and they allowed that to happen. Writers are expendable. So
I was going to say that I think that shows you how much writers were valued.
Yeah, very, very timely comment there.
Yeah. This is Adam from Indiana. Have you heard of the Netflix series Babylon Berlin? If so, what are your thoughts on it? If you haven't seen it, it's a series that takes place in Germany in the 1920s. Has some noir element, and it's best to watch in the German with English subtitles.
Well, it's good to know that Adam is late to the party, but we appreciate that. We want new viewers all the time. But boy, Adam, you missed. It seems to me like we talked about Babylon Berlin multiple times when it was first airing. I think we first started discussing the first season.
Yeah,
and then it went into a second season, and now I understand there will be a third season. That they have got the okay to do that. And Garen Rath, and it was a great character. I've one of my favorite TV series of all time. I no hesitation in saying that it's a show that mixes graphs of fictional storyline and fictional characters on actual events leading up to the rise of the Nazis in Germany. And it's just Fabulous, fabulous show. Loved every minute of it, especially when Brian Ferry was the musical consultant on the show.
Oh, cool. I
Uh,
didn't know that.
yeah. Because all the scenes in the nightclub, that it was all authentic, period music, which apparently Brian Ferry is somewhat of an expert on. And he actually performs. He's actually in one of the nightclub scenes. He's like the main performer. It was very, very cool. I mean, if anybody looks like they could have fit right in
Yep.
Weimar, Berlin, it's Brian Ferry. Okay, so let me get myself situated here. Oh, Chris wants to thank us for all the work we do to preserve film noir as an important genre. But his question is, he considers Frank Miller's Sin City and Sin City, A Dame to Kill For, as noir on steroids, understandably not fit for TCM. Your opinion, please? I'm gonna defer to you at first here, Anne. What is it? Have you seen those movies?
I've seen the first one. I've seen Sin City. I certainly think some of the stories were noir. I didn't think all of the stories were noir. I liked that there's an homme fatale for the rap in the story. I like that very, very much. But I thought some of it felt more like horror to me, but there were definitely ones that I felt were noir stories.
Yeah. I know that Frank Miller is a huge noir fan. And just to, because we're talking here, I met Frank Miller years and years ago when he just started working at Marvel. And some of my favorite things he's done are those very first comics he did for Marvel, where he took over the writing and illustrating of Daredevil. And they were so noir that it was like, wow. Because I had kind of gotten out of comics by then, but it was Frank Miller's return. And this is before he moved over to DC and started, revitalizing Batman over there. But the Daredevil stuff was just fantastic. But I'm not a huge Sin City fan, and that's not a criticism of Frank Miller or of Robert Rodriguez, who actually directed the film. It's just that I'm not a big fan of comic books translated to film, because I am a fan of comic books.
Yeah.
I just love the idea that they're written and drawn, and then it's ink on paper, and that's the vision. When all of a sudden computers get involved in it, and it's a whole different thing, and you're using actual actors and turning them into animated characters, somehow I tend to lose interest in it. And I can tell you that I have never seen Frank Miller's version of The Spirit. The Spirit is my all-time favorite comic thing. Will Eisner is like an idol of mine. And I know he is also, that Frank Miller idolizes Will Eisner, but I just can't bring myself to watch the movie. It's just like, how could this work? And so that's my take on those things. I mean, I get the idea that it's noir on steroids and all that, but I just somehow it doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay. This is Kevin from Salt Lake City. My question concerns one of my favorite films, 1978's Fingers, written and directed by James Toback. Harvey Keitel plays a young man torn between satisfying his disturbed mother's wish that he become a concert pianist and his loan shark father's desire that he becomes a collector for the mob. Can you think of any other examples of familial noir, where characters' lives are dictated by their parents or siblings or ancestors? A history of violence immediately comes to mind. I'm wondering if you can think of any others.
Oh my goodness. There's all kinds of these, right? I mean, in the classic era of, wow. I mean, House of Strangers, the Fox film with Edward G. Robinson as the patriarch of he's the banker, and he has the sons, and And then, of course, he's in All My Sons, which is, famous Arthur Miller play, but given a noir treatment in the movies. Gosh, family stuff.
Well, The Red House.
The Red House, another Edward G.
Another
Robinson
Edward
movie.
G.
It seems that
Robinson.
he was a specialist in this. Yeah. The one that just popped into my mind was The Sign of the Ram with Susan Peters, where she's in the wheelchair and she's like the matriarch of this family, and she's like really disturbed, which reminds me
Uncle Harry.
Uncle Harry, right? That's a real family issues movie. Yeah, absolutely. Strange Affair of Uncle Harry. Back to George Sanders and his perviness on screen. Yeah.
Even though he's not the pervy one.
He's not the pervy one. Geraldine Fitzgerald is the pervy one in that movie. She has feelings for her brother in that film. And yeah, it's amazing when they get those things past the censors,
Yeah.
Although I have to say, well, we shouldn't talk too much about The Strange Affair of Uncle Harry. That wasn't the question. We'll save. Now somebody will write in a question and say, "Tell us more about The Strange Affair of Uncle Harry."
And we will gladly.
And then we'll get to that. There was another one. Well, in a modern vein, Animal Kingdom, the Australian film Animal Kingdom, about the matriarch of a crime family. That was pretty great. And then there was old TV series adapted in the States where Ellen Barkin was terrific, playing the character that one of our fans here will fill us in. I can't remember the actress's name right now, the Australian actress who originated the part.
Who had really only been a comedian before that. She'd always done comedy parts before that role.
It always cracks me up when you learn that these people were comics, like, Beat Takeshi, who makes the most violent crime movies, and it's like he was a comedian.
Yeah.
And then you see he makes Violent Cop and, Sonatine and these films that are like ultra violence, and he's just deadpan through the whole movie. And you're thinking, is he see this as funny? Is this like a different version of his comedy? I could probably, if we had more time, I could think of dozens more family-based noir films. But all you have to do, Kevin, is look at this thread when this is on Facebook, and people will be filling in the dozens and dozens of movies that fit this bill. I remember in Neo-Noir, I remember Jamie Lee Curtis did one where she was like a psychotic mother. I think it was called like Mama's Boys or something
Mother's
like
Son or something. No, I actually haven't seen that. That's
something like that. Yeah, and she that was her getting to be the bad one, which is always a fun thing in the noir stuff. Nobody thinks of Jamie Lee Curtis as the villain.
Yeah.
Right. But in that movie, she was the villain, and she was like the psycho mom from hell. Okay. This is me now? Okay. Bill Stewart of Winnipeg, Manitoba. He hopes we have finally put to rest the question of what was the first film noir. No, Bill, that will never happen. That will never be put to rest. And he says The Maltese Falcon Natch, but it's the film that ignited the film noir movement. Is it the first film noir? I don't know. I mean, it doesn't look as noirish as I Wake Up Screaming, I'll tell you that much, but these are splitting hairs. How about looking at the opposite end of the cycle? Do you consider, as some people do, that Touch of Evil is the last film noir of the classic era? And what do you consider to be the first neo-noir? I don't consider Touch of Evil to be the last, classic noir. It's very tempting to say so because it's such a big, brazen, look at me kind of production that and the fact that Wells, I'm not saying that Citizen Kane launched the noir thing, but it certainly visually has so many of the noir elements in it that it's like its influence was great on what was to come. and so there's a natural tendency to say, and then Wells is the bookend because he ended it as well. But just the other night on TCM, I showed Odds Against Tomorrow, which came out after Touch of Evil, and it's full blown noir in my opinion, but it's just this is the kind of stuff that you leave to writers to decide these kind of things,
Yeah.
and then every writer has their own agenda
Yeah.
for how they would characterize the films or what it is about the film that makes it the last one. I mean, I always opt, as I did in my book in Dark City, to say Psycho.
Yeah.
Psycho is to me symbolically the last film noir because it very neatly fills that bill. Because it starts out as one thing, which is a film noir, and it ends as something else, which is a horror film. And that transition was so emblematic of the change in movie making that to me it's like the perfect example to cite as the last film noir.
Well, and it's kind of interesting too, because it also slides from, film noir being the low budget films to slasher films being the low budget film. I mean, too.
Yeah, I agree completely. But and that Hitchcock went back and shot it as a low budget film intentionally with his own money.
Yeah.
Because nobody would go near this because it was a daring film. So but there are all kinds of movies that fit this bill. My tendency is to think of neo-noir as these low budget, independently made films that were indicative of how the business itself had changed so dramatically. So in the 50s, when the studio noir was fading out, that's when you saw Stanley Kubrick come in with The Killing. Paul Wenkos comes in and makes The Burglar in Philadelphia as an independent film. Alan Barron makes Blast of Silence in New York as an independent film. And these things were all following in the tradition of noir, but they were doing it exactly the same way the French New Wave was changing everything over there. Right? It's like we don't agree with the way these things are done at the studio. We're going to do it in a homemade way on our own. And in many ways, I feel that it's important to consider that when you're talking about neo-noir. So I'd consider something like Blast of Silence to be more an example of if you want to call it the first neo-noir, than something like Harper or something like that, which is a big studio version in the 60s in color of The Big Sleep. I mean, it's incredible if you watch The Big Sleep and Harper back to back, like how much that is just a color 60s version of a Raymond Chandler, well, in this case, a Ross Macdonald novel that was adapted. But it's Chandler's LA that they're emulating in that film. And I know a lot of people consider Harper to be like one of the first neo-noirs, but I think those earlier films have to get credit for not only were they changing what you saw on the screen, they were changing the way the films were made.
Yeah.
Okay,
so this is from Neil. With the 2021 Nightmare Alley and now Marlowe, I wondered if the current picture business is starting to find interest in reviving old noirs. To me, it seems that to cater to a modern, jaded audience, directors have been making these noirs quite violent, excuse me. There's considerable less censoring and more technology in filmmaking, but do you envision any noirs being brought back today in a non-R-rated fashion, or would noir have been more violent genre in the 40s if the production code and technology allowed for it?
That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
I can tell you that noir, when it is sold as noir today, fails. That's just a fact. I mean, they tried everything conceivable to make Nightmare Alley work. I give 20th Century Fox a lot of credit for jumping on the Guillermo del Toro bandwagon and giving him everything he wanted to make that film. And he did a really good job with it. I mean, COVID had a lot to do with it not working, but I'm sorry, with it not succeeding. But they even let him do a black and white version, and people just stayed away. I honestly, it was like the original all over again. It was the failure of the original version in its time being repeated, and nobody wanted to see Tyrone Power play that character in 1947, and nobody wanted to see Bradley Cooper play that character in 2020 or whatever. And it's a good thing that the film was made and that it exists, and it will eventually find its place and people will see it, and they'll, I think it will have a very good reputation. Marlowe was a total disaster. I mean, it didn't make any money. They thought that because Liam, gee, and I see this as Neil. I hope it's not Neil Jordan who actually directed Marlowe. Sorry, Neil, if
that'd be embarrassing.
But it's weird. It's like, but this cuts to the point that Neil's trying to make here is people have expectations of what a Liam Neeson movie is. And Marlowe got goofed up because they cast Liam Neeson and people wanted to see him as an action hero.
Yeah.
And Philip Marlowe is not an action hero.
Yeah.
Right. And so they had to give Liam Neeson fist fights and big scenes where he's throwing guys around a room and all this stuff, which is not Marlowe at all. And really, I felt like there wasn't that much that I recall. There wasn't that much violence per se in Marlowe. I mean, they had to design a big climactic scene that had visual interest and everything, which was the best scene in the movie, when he's trapped and has to escape from the villain's lair and all that. But there was some anachronistic stuff in there. I mean, I think we've talked enough about Marlowe on past episodes. But as for the question of would it be different, I refer you to The Good German. Have you seen The Good German, the Soderbergh film?
I don't think I have.
Okay, so Steven Soderbergh, I can't remember how many years ago it was, 12 or 14 years ago, I don't know, made a film called The Good German that was based on I'm blanking on the author's name now. But it's a World War II story, and George Clooney, Kate Blanchett, and it was shot with the old equipment, the old Mitchell cameras and everything. And it was exactly what Neil was describing. It was Steven Soderbergh making a movie with no constraints via the production code in exactly the way it would have been made in 1946. I mean, he shot it consciously to emulate Michael Curtiz's directing style. It was photographed in black and white. It was like watching an RKO film like Berlin Express or something like that with bad language. They didn't cut away from the violence. And it too was probably the least successful film on Steven Soderbergh's resume, other than the ones he makes that aren't supposed to make any money.
Right.
I've seen a few of those and they're pretty damn good. They're pretty intriguing, but I don't know what that is, it's just like, so the answer to the question is, at least from my point of view, is if I was trying to sell a film today, I wanted to make a film noir, I wouldn't go in to the finance people and say, this is a film noir. A, they're not going to know what you're talking about, and B, they're not going to care. and C, they're going to think you're some cinephile who shouldn't be allowed near a movie camera because you're going to waste their money. If you go in and say it's a story about a man and a woman and they're deceitful and one of them is plotting to murder the other one and blah, 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 they'll buy that. Just don't call it a film noir. Because these things show up all the time, right? But mostly they're streaming now, and they're not available in movie theaters.
Yeah, and I think also is they're also, I think the problem is also their period pieces, because period pieces really don't do well unless they're like
right.
British people, and
that's very true.
So people don't really want, and I'm not even sure how well in the theater. I mean, I guess the Perot films have done pretty well, which are more modern period pieces.
Okay, I'm going to tell you that the last one, what was it? Death on the Nile? Was it I couldn't get through the first 10 minutes.
Will how we never get a good adaptation of that story? Because the one in 70 sucks too. And it's a great book, but they completely missed the boat. Sorry, I didn't. That was
missed the boat. They completely missed the boat. That was good, Anne.
Yeah. Because there is this back and forth between the murderer and Perot before everything starts. It's like really significant to the story, and they cut all that. And it's like they completely cut the actual like motivation.
Well, this is
characters, and now he's doing another one, and I saw the preview, and I could not figure out which friggin' book it was because they changed the title. I'm looking at what is this? Agatha Christie, and then I actually thought it was a different one. I thought it was a straight.
Well, I mean, at a certain point, maybe they fed two scripts into AI and had the computer create a hybrid, an Agatha Christie hybrid.
It was just like I just want them to make a good Agatha Christie adaptation. I do have a recommendation for people. There is a new or newish, new to hear French television adaptation of And Then There Were None, and it's great. And they changed things and stuff, but for some reason, the French do great Agatha Christie adaptations, and the English now suck at it. I don't understand. I don't, but if you it's, and I've seen so many versions of Then There Were None, it's ridiculous. I think I'm caught up on all of them now, but that one was really good.
Do you like the original one? The was it 45 or
yeah, except it has the ending the stage play.
The Renee Claire, yeah.
I mean, it's fun. I like it, but I don't like because I don't like the ones where they use the stage play ending. Right. Film wise, the best adaptation I think is the Russian one. There's a really good Russian film of it, and that is great.
Maybe there's another story in here, Anne. You can do something comparing all the versions of that Agatha Christie book.
That'd be fun. I mean, I would love to do it because I have a lot of opinions.
I always find those really interesting, and it's something that as a programmer, it's always so intriguing because I want to program stuff like that, and then you realize it's pointless because nobody's going to sit still to watch 5 versions of the same story.
Yeah.
Over it's an intellectual exercise that's fun for an individual to do over time.
Yeah.
It doesn't work to show them back to back to back, because my favorite is the story of the Honeymoon Killers, or not the Honeymoon, the Lonely Heart Bandits, which was the first one, which is a B film made right at the time that true story actually happened, about Ray Fernandez and Martha Beck, right, who killed women, preyed on women, who answered their Miss Lonely Hearts ads, and then the Honeymoon Killers got made, and then Arturo Ripstein did Deep Crimson, and then in 2006 there was another version called Lonely Hearts that was actually written by the guy whose grandfather, I think, was the cop who arrested them. And then there's a Belgian version of it called Alleluia that is really violent and bloody. So it kind of goes back to what who was it that asked Bill, who was asking about, would the films be different if they could be bloody and everything. And that's why I love that film as an example, because to go from the 1950 version to the Belgian version is the whole trip through the development of cinema. And just in terms of style, in terms of what's allowable on screen, because the actual true story just pushes the envelope of what, it's mind-boggling to think of what these two did. And
Yeah.
it's so intimate and so grotesque how they murdered these people, that suggesting it in 1950 and then just, full on turning it into a horror film in 2014. It seemed like that was the progression, going from a subtle mystery story to a full-on horror film. And that's just Psycho's to blame.
That's right. We'll blame it. We'll blame it all on Hitchcock.
Blame it all on Alfred Hitchcock.
Okay. So you read, let's see, did you read or did I read Neil's?
We did Neil's. We did Neil's.
Do you want to read Craig from Carlsbad?
Okay, I'm going to read Craig from Carlsbad. He has a question about a small but important detail. Two of my absolute favorite remarks in film noir. They are both spoken in Out of the Past. The first is said by Robert Mitchum to Jane Greer. Baby, you're like a leaf. Baby, you're like a leaf. The wind blows from gutter to gutter. That's a good line. And also, after Greer pleads to him, Jeff, I don't want to die, he responds, neither do I, baby, but if I have to, I'm going to die last. And
I love that line.
It's a great line. Sometimes I think about it and it's like, does this line actually make sense? But yeah, it does. It is a good line. So Craig says he's always attributed these lines to Daniel Mannering, the screenwriter, who wrote the book and is credited for the screenplay for the movie. But I thought I heard Eddie mention another screenwriter who came up with these gems. If you have an answer, please let me know. The other writer is Frank Fenton, who I cannot tell you precisely who wrote what, but I do know that Frank Fenton wrote Robert Mitchum's voiceover. Frank Fenton is the guy who wrote the internal monologue that Mitchum delivers throughout the film. So, it was the bottom of the barrel and I scraped it and all that stuff. That's all Frank Fenton, because I believe it was put on the film after everything was done because the story was a little hard to follow. And so they thought we really need to glue this together with a voiceover. The dialogue, for all I know, could very well be Mannering, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if Frank Fenton, whose specialty was wisecracks, if Frank Fenton came in and juiced up some of that stuff in the film. Like the scene in the hotel where Kirk Douglas suddenly appears, and what's that great line he has where he says, I got the feeling you're watching me or something. And he says, I can't remember the line, something about his squeaky shoes, or very squeaky shoes, Boy, I butchered that. I should know that line, but I just mangled that. Anyway, so that's those two guys get most of the credit. Of course, I'm sure noir fans know that James Cain took a crack at that screenplay at one point, and I don't know if any of his work is actually left in the film. James M. Cain was not a particularly good screenwriter.
Okay, and this is Dennis from Champlain, New York.
I think Dennis had two questions.
Dennis had two questions. I grabbed some of these because it kind of went together.
I gotcha.
So apologies, people. As I understand, Out of the Past was released in the UK under its original title, Build My Gallows High. I was curious if either of you have seen a UK print with that title and if there are any other differences in the UK prints.
I have not seen it, and I don't know. I've never heard talk of any differences between them. So I'm very doubtful. I mean, it's a Jacques Tourneur movie. He was a very tasteful, subtle director. I don't think there would be anything that was too objectionable that would have been cut. Um, I just think that the gallows is a I think they cut that in the U.S. because it's actually more of a British term,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah,
Send them to the
gallows. Yeah.
gallows, you know. Uh, so it makes perfect sense that they kept it in England, but you know that's too quote unquote poetic a title for a Hollywood film. Build my gallows high. Although Mitchum does say the line in the movie, so that, and as I pointed out when I wrote Dark City, I think Robert Mitchum is the only actor in Hollywood that could actually say that line and get away with it
Yeah.
because he's so good at, you know, he's so hep. He's gonna build my gallows high, baby. He can't
Yeah.
get away with it if he doesn't add baby at the end of the line.
Yeah.
He's got to say it was just then build my gallows high. Terrible, terrible. Build my gallows high, baby. Then it's like, okay, now that works. That's a good line. Okay, we're in the home stretch here. Craig from Nashville, as opposed to Craig from Carlsbad.
Exactly.
There are two different Craigs. Although it may be the same Craig, he's just asking the question because he's a nomadic sort of guy. So one day he's in Carlsbad and then he travels to Nashville and asks another question. So who knows? We could be onto something here, Ann. There could be Craig could be a peripatetic serial killer who is roaming the United States, and his only tether to reality is that he asks these questions of these people who have this goofy podcast about film noir. And you know, we'll see. You'll see. Wait till you see what his next question is when he sends it in, and he'll be Craig from, you know, Laramie or someplace. Anyway, okay. In a recent episode, Eddie said, and he's paraphrasing. Thank you for that, Craig from Nashville. That he is paraphrasing it. Eddie said he hates teenagers and hated being one. Remind me of the teenager who liked being a teenager. You really, you
Yeah.
liked being a teenager.
I was living in London.
Oh, okay.
I had a
All
great
right.
time. A great circle of friends, smoking hash, drinking, smoking cigarettes. I had a good
Okay,
high
you
school
had a
years.
good teen life. You grew up fast, Dan. Uh, that said, are there any film noir movies with teens as the protagonists that you enjoy? Um, Obviously, the one that immediately jumps to mind is Brick, is
I
Ryan
hate that
Johnson's
movie.
Brick. So tell me why. Good. Now you got one that you hate on this show as well. I did not mind that movie at all. I thought it was amusing because, and I'll tell you exactly why I like that movie. I liked it because it was filled with so much language, and it was teenagers delivering the dialogue. I thought it was very creative and unexpected, and the play on hard boiled noir, it amused me. You know, like the scene where Joseph Gordon-Levitt goes to the counselor's office and Richard Roundtree is the counselor, and it's just like Bogart and Ward Bond, only it's like, I'll see you at the teacher parent conference. You know, it just made me laugh. Why did
Yes.
you hate it?
When it came out and people were angry with me, they're like, but you like film noir? How can you like this movie? I just thought it just didn't work. I mean, the kids with like the dialogue just seemed really ridiculous coming from teenagers, and then also, I mean, you can't really do a film noir with teenagers because they haven't suffered. I mean, there's some exceptions to that, but that was part of the problem too, is to me, you can't really do a film noir without people that haven't lived life and become jaded and disappointed with it. But I
Fair
do have
enough.
to say that I thought the cinematography and the art design, I mean, what he did with that budget and how great that film looked, I really respected that. And I have to say, though, when he gets together with the drug dealer and the drug dealer is dressed like Barnabas Collins from Dark Shadows, I lost my shit. That was hilarious. Like, it was worth seeing the whole film just for that scene because I laughed so hard. I
And
have
what
to
was
admit that tickled my funny bone.
yeah, and what was the guy? It was called the Pin or something like
Some
that. Wasn't the character's
Yeah,
name? It
because it
was
kind
like
of
the
amped him
Pin.
up, and then he's being driven around in the back of his
Yeah.
mother's van. He's dressed up like Barnabas Collins. I have to admit that got me. I loved
Yeah, I
that.
thought it was pretty funny. Now, a film about teenagers that has noirish qualities that I thought was pretty hardcore and kind of played for keeps because it was maybe the ultimate teenage movie was Heathers. Did you ever
Oh
see
yeah,
Heathers with
yeah, yeah. Oh, it's a
Christian
great film.
Slater and Winona
Yeah,
Ryder? Yeah,
yeah.
that was a pretty dark freaking movie.
It's extremely dark movie. Yeah. No.
Um, so I mean, I've never before this moment have I ever thought of Heathers as a film noir.
Oh,
Uh,
it's a film noir though. I mean, the position is kind of reversed where he's dragging her out of, her ordinary life, and he's the one. He's more like the homme fatale character that she gets pulled
Absolutely,
into. Yeah.
absolutely. He's like the stranger who comes to town, and it's very much like Rebel Without a Cause. He's
Mhm.
very much modeled on that character.
Oh,
The new kid in town who doesn't fit in, and then he's got a deep dark secret,
yeah.
and yeah, I like that movie. I thought that was really good. Okay, so the sidebar from Craig is that he was tickled to learn that Anne is a weightlifter. He's always watching Ask Eddie on YouTube while working out in my home gym. If you're willing, please drop some of your proudest PRs. Now, what is that? Since I'm not a weightlifter, is that like a personal record or something?
Yeah, yeah. So it'd be
Yeah,
like, yeah, well, I work out at home, free weights. And of course I don't have a spotter at home, so mine aren't that
yeah, of course
impressive.
you're
Because
dumb to try
obviously,
to lift too much weight if you're alone. Yeah.
right, yeah. So I'd say chest press 24-pound barbell is probably my best. And same with with squats. Split lunge I can only do up to 15.
Wow. Okay, you're deep into this stuff.
And then biceps, I have really probably 12 for a concentration curl. I've probably done 15 at one time, but I'm going for higher reps since I'm older and lower weights, and I have to do so much more flexibility training. I can't believe.
Probably a good idea.
So now, like, I used to get up at 4:30 to work out, and like now I have to get up at 4 because after my weight training and stuff, then I have to do like an extra 20 minutes at least of stretching. So this
I hear you.
I've definitely as I've aged kind of had to adjust out.
I lift no weights because I have such a chronically bad back issue that I just don't. I try not to lift anything, honestly, because because it just takes that one little tweak, and so far I'm okay. I haven't had a serious back issue in a couple of years since before COVID. I'm happy to report. But I do not I go to the gym, but I go to the gym, it's all for cardio and stretching and stuff. I don't do any weightlifting because I'm stupid that way. I would of course try to I know I can lift, 10 more pounds than this, and then I'd ruin myself and I'd be, unable to function. So I
Yeah.
like to function. So
Yeah, and for me, I started lifting in high school, and it's okay. So I don't know. I don't think I've told the story here, but so I started weightlifting in high school. So I asked my dad to buy me like a weight set and a bench, which he did. And then decades later, he was visiting me at my place, and he looked at the weight bench that he had bought me, and it was literally like held together with duct tape at this point. And he said, "When I bought you that weight set, I thought you would never use it."
good for you.
Yeah, I mean, that's just my thing. I mean, I do a lot of cardio as well, but that's weights have just always been my thing because I've never been good at sports and stuff like that. But I love weight training. Yeah.
Good, 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 good. Well, you have some devotees now who watch. And what about Charlotte? Does she lift anything? Does she lift her head off the pillow at some point?
Oh yeah, she swatted at Sean
Oh, okay, good.
already. I warned him.
Gave Sean a swat. That's just great.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we have managed to wind it up. Somehow we do this now, and it always clocks in like right at the time that I think it's going to clock in at. That's pretty amazing. And my dad has been presiding over this whole show. You know, I just wanted to mix things up, so I turned everything around this week, and it's very confusing because if you could see, I've just got wires all over the place, and it's like if I move, everything's going to collapse. So, so, so I've been somewhat constrained here, but this is. I figured if I did it this way, if people get bored with what I'm saying, they can like browse the bookshelf behind me and see what's up there to read. You know, that's right there is my award I got at the Czech Film Festival years ago. They gave me that. What is it? I can't even remember what it's called, but it's kind of plexiglass. It was very difficult to get it home. But I did, and there it is on my bookcase now. Very proud of that. So, Anne, I'm going to see you this week.
Yes.
At the movies. Very good. And I'm hoping that we get to see some of these good people who watch Ask Eddie and Anne at an upcoming festival, whether it's in Philadelphia or in LA in August. And then, of course, at the end of August, we're going to be in Chicago at the Music Box, which is like 14th year, maybe even the 15th year at this point. And then Detroit's coming up after that, and then Washington, D.C. And then, I'm hoping there's going to be a TCM cruise. I have not heard otherwise in November. So lots of opportunities to actually meet people in person.
Yeah. And NOIR City Christmas. And then we do it all over again.
And I think I know what I'm going to show this year at NOIR City Christmas, but I'm not going to mention it quite yet because we have to see if we can get a good print of it.
I have a Danish film I recommended.
Well, who knows? I don't, I used to do NOIR City Christmas. The times have changed, and it was always a double bill. And I just think that it's just hard to get people, because I always do it on a weeknight, on a Wednesday, and it's hard to get people on a weeknight to stay for the second feature. So I think we'll probably just do some fun stuff around the show, but just show one movie.
Yeah, and everybody's so exhausted because you start having all your company holiday parties and all your obligations. So it's kind of nice to go to one movie and get away from everything.
Yep, exactly. But we always try to build a little extra into it. We're shooting the poster for the next NOIR City Festival. We're shooting the poster on Friday during the day. So I'm not going to say anything about that, but people will be amused and perhaps surprised by this upcoming poster. It'll be fun.
All right, cool. And just so people know, if you go to filmnoirfoundation.org on the news page, we have a list of all the festivals and the dates. So just so people know that as soon as we get dates confirmed, we always put that up because people always ask, when is this? When is this? So that's always the most updated information.
Okay, fantastic. So this was fun, as always, and I appreciate all the questions from folks, and I'm glad that we have new people watching who are asking questions that may have already been asked before, but that's okay, because we like to revisit this stuff. And it's all good.
Yeah, and just let people know, at this point, I think these questions are coming from February of this year. So just so you know, that we will get to your question eventually. I promise. It just, we get a lot of questions, and we're trying to record as much as we can. But it's hard to keep up when we're not doing it twice a month. So,
Yeah.
we're doing our best, but obviously we have a lot of festivals and things going on. So we're doing, but we love you. Keep sending in questions. We will get to them, I promise.
Please do. We will get to all of them. Okay, Anne, I'm going to go have a cocktail, and I will talk to you. I'll see you very soon.
Okay.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Bye.